My name is Zach Norris, and this is my Enron Case presentation. So this was very interesting. Before getting started, I didn't have a whole lot of knowledge on the whole Enron scandal. Obviously, I knew it had happened, but I didn't know little details. I didn't know anything about the CEOs, the CFO. I didn't know any of that. So looking into this deeper was really interesting, especially watching the movie, The Smartest Guys in the Room. That was extremely interesting, and it kind of, in a way, reminded me of Wolf of Wall Street. Just the fiasco and craziness and all the egos that were involved. So to start off, I will first talk about the leadership failures, some of the leadership failures that I can identify in the collapse of Enron. So first would just be pride and arrogance. I mean, these guys, they thought they had it all, and they thought they were big because they were. They were literally on top of the world, and they wanted to let other people know. And you could just see this in the way they handled themselves, and also just in their meetings, the way that they had that kind of dog eat dog mentality. And if you weren't producing the right numbers for the company, then you were gone, and they weren't going to skip a beat. So they never really worried about how they were treating people. As more of how can we get ahead and how can we make money, and they weren't afraid to show that. They showed that true arrogance. And next, they just had so much greed. I mean, no matter how much money they had, it wasn't going to be enough. There was still going to be some way, some little change they can make just to possibly make just a little bit more money. And also that sometimes they weren't making the money, but they could easily say that they were, or show that they were, or convince others to invest in the company, invest in these fake companies, just so that they could show that they were making money because they had so much greed. And they kind of wanted to show that social status. They wanted to be the top company, and they were going to do whatever it took to kind of present that to the rest of the companies out there that were trying to compete with Enron. And last is, like I just talked about a little bit ago, is that survival of the fittest mentality. I know listening to some of those calls in the movie when they were talking, the traders talking back and forth, especially during the wildfires in California, it was like, these guys, they don't care about lies, they don't care about anything else but making money. And it's survival of the fittest. If they have to knock someone down to make some money, they're going to do it. Even in the company, if you have to knock one of your own employees down, hey, they're going to do it if they can make extra money. It's all about survival of the fittest. The CEOs really instilled a kind of mindset of how can we make money no matter what? How can we go about making money? If you're not making us money, then you can just go ahead and be pushed to the side. And so now I'll talk about some of the many ethical failures, but just talk about a couple here. The first one was the creation of the fake companies. They talked a lot about Andrew Fastow, especially in the movie, and looking more into that. It's really interesting kind of now, going off topic a little bit, but seeing his life now and how he is able to kind of use that to talk at different public appearances to kind of show, like, here's what happened. You can even do this stuff without even knowing it. That's what's crazy, even though sometimes he might be making that up, I'm sure. But creating these fake companies and disguising the companies so that they could show that they're improving their financial position when they really are not, and kind of just tricking these other companies into thinking that they were investing in these big companies, and they really weren't. So that was the first one. And the next was just the inappropriate behavior. They talked about, I can't remember his name right now, but they talked about the guy bringing strippers up to work. They talked about just the way that they handled themselves and the way that they treated their employees and also treated other people. Just the fact that they were bringing strippers in, that's absolutely crazy. And that's kind of what reminds me of the Wolf of Wall Street, actually, which is pretty bad. And also Skilling taking out his execs on these crazy trips. In the movie, they talked about the motorbike experiences, and a lot of that is just him trying to show off his ego, almost his manliness, and trying to make himself seem like he is someone that he really isn't, and trying to get that adrenaline rush. And he kind of had that mentality of he was invincible, and that caused them to kind of skew away from the ethical side of things, and said it was more about just making money. And last is the constant lying and blaming. I know even till the end, Skilling was constantly lying. And then if something was presented that he could not go against, that was completely true, then he would put the blame on someone else. Like when Fastow was finally found out, I know before that they were having a meeting, and they were talking about Fastow, how ethical he is and how everything he does is right. But then in the court hearings, they throw him under the bus once they find out, okay, there's no way that we can prove that this was innocent, so we're just going to go ahead and throw him under the bus. So it's just constant lying and constant lying to the employees in their meetings like, hey, everything's fine, everything's good, we're still making money, we're still going to come back, even though they know that they're not going to come back. And then just trying to make money for themselves in the end whenever they knew the company was going down, just trying to make money specifically for themselves when it hurt their employees, it hurt other people in this business. And so last, I'll just talk about kind of the value of corporate codes of ethics and also what can make them more valuable. So number one would be, some advantages would be attract customers because of ethical standards. I know the first company I think of having great ethical standards would be Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A, they operate under the Christian standards, and that company is doing things right. They are bringing people back, and people go because of the service they receive at Chick-fil-A. I mean, they have high morals, high values, and it shows in the way that they run their business. It is truly amazing. And then it's crazy to see Enron, the way they treated people and their employees, and ultimately what ended up happening to them. And then also good employee retention. Whenever you have high values, high ethics, you're going to attract the right people for your company. Somewhere like Enron that's not showing that, they're going to attract those kind of bad people, those people that aren't going to have such high ethics. And that ends up what kind of hurts the company in the end. Kind of similar to Enron, those traders talking on the phone, like you see that wildfire, man, we're going to make some money here. You see that power outage in California, we're going to make some more money here. But then when you work somewhere else that has high values, you're going to attract those people with high values, and it's going to make your company look so much better to the public. And then last, it would be create a healthy brand name. So once again, going back to Chick-fil-A, the first thing I think of when I hear Chick-fil-A is just the amazing standards. And it's like every time I go there and you purchase food, they're going to say, my pleasure, or just those little things. And lastly, whenever you have high values, the importance of them, for me especially, is my Christian beliefs. And it might sound really simple, but it's just doing what is right and knowing what is right. I mean, there's going to be so many times in business where you're presented with an option that you know is wrong. And you can either choose to take that path or you can take the right path. When you take that little small path that ends up being wrong, it could lead down some crazy rabbit hole. And ultimately, it could end up like Enron. And so kind of in conclusion, in the Enron case, I mean, we see just kind of a complete worst end of the spectrum of what could happen to a company when they don't value ethics. And first off, it starts with the leaders. It starts with that leadership, it trickles down. And I mean, when people see Skilling acting the way he is, just cocky, arrogant, the employees are going to work the same way that he does. And they're going to act just like him because they see him as kind of their role model. He's making a lot of money. He's living the good life. So I'm going to do whatever he's doing. But then whenever you have high values, they're going to follow the same way. And your employees are going to want to be more like you. So it starts with the leadership. However that leadership is, the rest will eventually follow. And so in Enron, it was poor leadership, obviously. They've done jail time for it. And so just focusing on how you can have those certain values. And for me, in business, it comes from my Christian beliefs. And for others, it comes from other things. It's kind of having that moral code. So it's however you can establish that and know what is right and wrong and kind of how to avoid going down that long rabbit hole. Thank you.